Afternoon. My name is Steve Conti. I am the program manager at Commonwealth Electrical for the on-street EV program. Thank you for joining us today on the webinar, the first of two webinars that we'll be having to discuss the on-street program with our municipal partners and hopefully teach you guys a little bit more about the program that we are rolling out at the moment for the Mass CEC. So I'm going to present a few slides and we will have a question and answer session towards the end. I'm sure there will be a few questions, but let me share my slides real quick. Great, so thank you again for joining. This is the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center On-Street Charging Solutions Program webinar. Today we're going to give an overview of the program, some rough timelines that you can expect as a participant in the program, the application process that is currently ongoing, and then we'll finish up with some question and answer. So an overview of the program, the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, Mass CEC, they are currently rolling out 4 different electric vehicle focused incentive programs. And we at Commonwealth were fortunate enough to have been awarded one of those, being the on-street EV charging program. This is a 2-year program that just started back in November and is going to go through until December of next year. So a really short time frame, and we have a lot of work to do in that time, and we'll get to that. So the offering for the selected municipalities, it's really one of 2 options. Either a planning support and feasibility study offering, which we'll get into more in a second, and the on-street charging infrastructure installation, really the project implementation offering. So you can apply for both. You will only be selected if you are selected for one or the other. Municipalities can't double dip and receive both a feasibility study as well as project implementation. The focus of the program is really more on low-income, disadvantaged communities, those environmental justice communities, and promoting access to EV charging within those communities. And just to make the note, we are partnering on this program with Leidos Engineering. They're going to be handling much of the program administration and some of the design work and feasibility studies, as well as Flow Charging as the preferred manufacturer. And we'll talk a bit about that as well as a number of other local firms to help us succeed in this program. So the first offering that I mentioned, the planning support and feasibility studies, we expect to award this offering to about 25 municipalities. So at the end of the day, those municipalities will receive a feasibility study report that includes recommendations for where to site these on-street charging stations, recommendations for ownership structure, maintenance of the stations, how to enforce parking and other regulations, and a number of other factors, for successful future deployment of the on-street chargers if that municipality chooses to proceed with the full project sometime in the future. Most importantly, it will also include estimates for cost and timelines and just best practices for implementing those projects when that time comes. But that's really where this offering stops. It's a lot of the same steps as the implementation offering that we'll get into, but the final deliverable to the municipality is really just that PDF final feasibility study report that will be kind of their guide for a future deployment, as well as a presentation to the other municipal stakeholders who might want to be made aware of the the good work that went into the feasibility study. Now, the second offering, the more expensive offering, and where most of our budget for this program will be going, is the actual installation of on-street charging infrastructure. We expect to award this offering to about 15 municipalities. And these are municipalities who are scored higher in our selection process. They'll be the ones who really get the full project award. And, the next 25 or so will then get the planning study. So for the implementation offering, Commonwealth and Leidos, we will design the projects for you. We will procure the stations and all the other electrical infrastructure and install the successful, project at the sites that are selected, along with, the municipal and community engagement that we're going to speak about a little bit as well. But all of that will be done at no cost to you. That's really the key that we want to impress upon everybody, is that this is really one of the very few free programs out there for both this and the feasibility study offering. All of this is covered at no cost to the municipality. Everything from the kickoff meeting with you all once you're selected, the site walks, the design work with engineering plans, the community engagement to successfully select the sites and smart locations, and the labor and materials needed to put these stations in the ground, the utility interconnections. Everything that goes into a project like this would be covered 100% by the Mass CEC. And because of that, we are not going through any of the utility or state funding programs, because this program really does cover just about everything. So for the implementation package, we have an expedited pathway that we are going to propose to those selected municipalities. This is kind of a cookie cutter package of design options. And this includes our preferred charging station manufacturer, Flow, with their Smart 2 pedestal charging station. These are level 2 chargers, meaning you can charge your EV from empty to about 80% in 4 to 8 hours. Just for some folks who aren't as familiar with EV charging, that's kind of the medium speed charge compared to DC fast charging, which you would typically see in more public locations and rest stops along travel corridors, things like that. These are really meant for more long dwell time types of parking scenarios, which is what this program is focused on. We're focused on providing street charging access to folks in residential settings who might not have access to their own chargers in their own driveways or garages. So we think that the level 2 package will suffice. This expedited pathway would also be more of a traditional ownership model, meaning the municipality would be the ones owning and maintaining the stations at the end of the day. Commonwealth and Leidos would be providing you with a ownership and maintenance plan after the project is in service, and we hope that would, set you on a successful path towards owning and operating these stations. And the way that we've budgeted this offering, this kind of cookie cutter package, we would only be able to offer this to municipalities at about 3 different charging sites in town. There is some flexibility, some sites are more expensive than others, but we expect the average to be about 3 on-street locations for each municipality, each with about 2 to 5 of these dual plug stations, meaning 4 to 10 charge ports. So that's the expedited pathway. We are flexible. We are able to work with you if you have other other solutions in mind for your particular situation. Maybe you want a larger number of charging stations. You want maybe a faster level 2 charger than the 7 kilowatts that the Flow charger puts out. Different mounting options if a city or town and the utility allow pole mounted, that is an option as well. Basically, there are a lot of different ways of going about this, but for the most streamlined path, we have our cookie cutter design package, but we are able to work with you if you have other requirements you need to meet. The only downside to this is that doing these kind of one-off custom designs for the project implementation projects is going to just take a little bit longer, and this is a aggressive 2-year time frame for the program. So time is of the essence for sure. Speaking of the timing, we have the application open right now, and I'll speak on that in a second. But that will be wrapping up in mid-February. That's the due date is February 14th. If you are selected, and we hope to make the selections within a matter of weeks following the closure of the application window, we would expect the chosen municipalities to sign an MOU in the month of March. We would proceed with a kickoff meeting in April. We would have a significant community outreach engagement plan in place that we would implement in the month of May, ideally having the sites selected and walked by June. And you can see how fast this is going. This is definitely going to be an aggressive timeline, but we are confident that we can meet it with your help. And we hope that the feasibility studies will be wrapped up towards the end of the year. Our goal is September, and the implementation of the charging projects themselves will be wrapped up by November. Again, this is aggressive, and we are um, giving ourselves all of 2026 to complete the program and spend the money that was allotted to the Mass CEC to deploy this program. So the application that I referenced is online. This is available now. The link is here, and it's been in a number of our email blasts so far, and we'll be sure to send as a follow-on to the attendees of this webinar. But essentially, like I mentioned previously, you can select which offering you are interested in. Maybe if for your situation, you might not be ready for the full project deployment and you only want the feasibility study. That's fine. You can select both if you want to be considered for the project implementation, but if you don't qualify or you are scored as high as another candidate, you would still be eligible to receive that feasibility study. And again, this application is due by close of business on Friday, February 14th. It's a relatively straightforward application. We do have a lot of program information kind of at the start and finish of the page, but that form itself is relatively straightforward. But if you have any questions about any of the obligations that you might have as a participant in the program, any of the fields that we're asking for information for, please don't hesitate to reach out. And just final thoughts on this this program and this presentation here. It's a great opportunity. Like I said, there really isn't anything else out there in terms of a grant program like this that really offers to cover everything 100% on a relatively quick time frame. So we do need your help to meet that time frame, and a lot of the steps along the way are going to be very collaborative. Selecting the sites, engaging with the community stakeholders. We will really rely on our municipal partners to help us with a lot of these steps. And again, we are targeting some of those disadvantaged communities. So the folks that meet state-defined LIDAC or EJC criteria, they might be scored higher than an applicant who does not, but that's not to say that you might not, even if you aren't scored high enough to receive the full project, you might still be able to get the feasibility study. So please don't let that preclude you from applying. And it really all depends on who applies. So if you're on this webinar, if you have interest in the program, I highly encourage you just to submit an application for consideration. Even if you don't think you're going to meet every criteria that we're looking for, you never know. And it doesn't hurt to apply. It's not an obligation, it's non-binding. The meat of the contract would come once you're selected and you're signing the MOU. So the application itself is relatively simple, and we look forward to receiving that from everybody. So I'll stop there. Thank you all for listening. I'll open it up now for question and answer. See if we have anything in the chat here. I'll start with Talia. Yeah, you've got your hand up. We'll do some of the hand raises first.
Hey. Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. I'm just wondering if we're applying for the implementation grant, how specific do the locations need to be on the application? I know there's that text box. Is a general area okay? Do you want like a cross street? Do you want like addresses? And then should we keep it to 3 sites only? Or if we have more than 3 locations, we'd consider, should we submit all of those for consideration?
Yeah, great question. So we do ask for rough locations on the application if you're interested in the implementation offering, but that is not a requirement. We fully expect that folks will be, awarded this implementation offering and have no idea where they want the chargers, and we're prepared to work with you to figure all that out. So if you don't have anything in mind, that's fine, but we do encourage you to start thinking about it. And if you do have an idea, to just put it down there. It could be three, could be five, could be one. It's really just to get you thinking. Yeah, Jennifer. I don't think I can hear you. No, I'm sorry. Let me try Sam and just make sure it's not an issue on my end. Hi, Sam.
Hey Steve, how's it going? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. So Jennifer goes
Hey,
away.
yeah, Jennifer, if you start talking, we can hear you. I'll pause and let you go first, of course. I'm just going to ask the question that I put in the chat, but you're talking about ownership of the stations that would fall on the municipalities at the completion of the project. So I've worked with other charging stations, but not Flow, and so in terms of the cloud plans that are required for them to operate and maintenance. Are those plans that will be included for a certain number of years, like charge point stations, or is that something that from day one of operations, the municipalities would be required to fund? I'll have a follow-up question to that, but
Yeah, yeah. So just a couple things. So the expedited path with the flow charger and the traditional, municipal ownership model. Again, that's a preference, but if you want to go with a different type of ownership model or even a different type of station, that's totally fine. There are third-party ownership options out there. Charging station lease programs, things like that, and we're open to that. As far as cloud services and maintenance plans, things like that, we've confirmed with the CEC that that is an eligible cost to be covered by the program. So at the end of the project, we would be happy to essentially give you a proposal for a maintenance plan or a 5-year network package or something like that that would be covered by the program. It's at
okay.
no cost to
You
the
said so. You
municipality.
said did you say 5 years or just a unconfirmed time frame of coverage, and then at the end of that, hypothetically, then the municipality would be required to renew, whether it be flow charge, whatever the station is at some point after the completion of the initial proposal package, then the municipalities would be required to renew cloud or maintenance plans.
We're in the process of writing up the contract language right now, so it's still a little bit
Okay.
murky, but that was, 5 years. That's kind of what we proposed, and the CEC had no issue with that.
Okay.
Um, Not to say that we
Yeah, I mean,
can't at some
I'm
point change that, but
definitely open to. It wasn't about flow. It's just
yeah.
obviously something that we and all other municipalities are, when purchasing stations, seeing that they come with these plans incorporated in the cost initially, and then they can snowball in terms of annual reoccurring costs. Um, the follow-up question would be about pricing. Um, Jennifer, I think I heard you. So do you mind if I ask a
Hello?
second? Hey,
I
there
can
you
hear you
are. Hey.
now.
Jennifer, do you mind if I ask a second quick
No,
question?
go ahead, please.
Thanks. The second quick question is about pricing. And so how I know that every municipality here pays a different rate through Eversource, which Steve, I know you're familiar with. So how do we manage pricing? Because one of the many things that we run into is owners of these stations who cover them at no cost setting the pricing, and
Mhm.
many residents not being super thrilled about how high of a rate they're being charged?
Sure. So if you end up owning the stations, if the municipality ends up being the owner of the stations, as part of our O&M plan that we would give to you at the end of the project, there would be recommendations for how to set the rates at which you would charge the EV drivers to kind of recoup some of that cost of, the electricity that you're paying to Eversource or National Grid or your, municipal light plant. So there, we would certainly be able to advise you on that. And, I know some folks aren't as familiar with it, and it is kind of a daunting thing when you don't know the ins and outs of it. But, and if it were a third party that owns the stations, we would take that into consideration in our O&M plan. And, obviously the municipal needs would be kind of built into that, recommendation.
When you say third party owns the stations, the default for this program that we're talking about right now is that the stations would be gifted at no cost, right? So the towns or the municipalities by default would own the stations
Right.
at the end of this project. Okay, and so we would have to, as part of the negotiation of the price setting and the recommendations, we as the municipalities would not need to like we wouldn't be in a tussle with Flow or with with the company that provides it. Like we'll have the flexibility at a default to set whatever price we want.
Yep. Once you,
Okay,
once
that's
the
great. Thank you.
stations are online,
Yeah.
you're the owner, you can, make it free for everybody. You can set, 50 cents a kilowatt hour, whatever you want to do. And we'll
Great.
have our
Thanks, Steve.
recommendations that you can, take or leave. But yeah, thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Jennifer, for letting me go.
Thank you, Sam. Okay, so Stephen, two things to start. We are in the design phases of a major artery infrastructure project with Mass DOT for our Main Street, which is probably where we would look to have these chargers. Is that a consideration if we're like in a design phase? Like, would we not want to move forward if we were accepted and we were awarded to install these, if they then were going to have to be taken out and removed and put back in later? That's one question.
Yeah, I don't think we would want to go ahead with the project if we know that they're going to have to be taken out and possibly relocated
Right,
in a year
okay.
or two.
Yep.
But if, the project is underway and it is looking to be wrapped up before the end of this program term, end of 2026, then we can certainly work with you to, make sure that they get in kind of in coordination with the rest of the
Right.
your project.
Okay. We currently have 2 charging stations in the parking lot of our town hall. And they were put in, I'm gonna say, I've been here 4 years, they were put in maybe 5 to 6 years ago through a Green Communities grant through DOER. We have not been charging people because we were under the impression we couldn't. And then I just recently verified that we could charge customer or residents or whoever's using it, whoever's using it. And I didn't know if, and I think I heard you say to Sam that they're provided to the community can choose to charge or not.
Correct.
Okay, and this is like a technical question. Do you know if they all come with a way to have a charging mechanism, or is it something we'd have to add to the units if we decided to charge later?
Oh, you mean like a credit card reader or
Yeah,
something?
exactly.
Yeah, I think the Flow stations and a lot of the other stations operate with, just the cell phone app. You would have an account as an EV driver with all your credit card
Yeah.
information in there. Some of them
Okay.
have, fobs and things like that.
Like
But
scanning a QR code or something
yeah,
maybe too. Okay.
we have, just in our business here at Commonwealth encountered stations that you can purchase a, credit card reader attachment. So that's an option if you feel the need to, have that on your stations. We can work with you, and haven't asked the question specifically, but I have a feeling that would also be covered by the program.
Okay, and we are an environmental justice community, but I don't know if, is it the whole community or just portions of the community is considered that? Because I know like on some of our planning things for municipal vulnerability and other grants, we had to identify which areas were EG, but that doesn't make the whole community EG, right?
Right, that's a good question. So on the application that we have right now, which we'll use as part of the municipal selection, that cohort of municipalities who are getting these awards, that takes kind of a percentage into consideration, what percentage of the, census tracts are falling in an environmental justice, things like that. But in terms of the actual sites, if you are selected, once we get down that road and we're into a site selection, we'll want to prioritize the ones that are not, they don't have to necessarily be in the heart of a, EJ neighborhood, but at least, accessible to those EJ neighborhoods. Those sites would be prioritized.
Okay,
It's not a
and
hard and fast requirement per se.
the other question I have about that is there anything on the application, or would there be, to determine how many EV vehicles the town residents have?
We have a lot of that data just from like the mass, the state vehicle registry.
Okay, will
Um,
it populate to our application, or it's just something you guys will have access to?
we have access to it. I don't want to speak to the, the scoring criteria just yet because that is still being, finalized. But the, that might be taken into account as well. But
I'm just thinking off the top of my head, because if we don't, we're a very small town. We have 8,100 residents. So I'm trying to think in my head of, okay, is it going to be a part of the scoring to say, of the X amount of drivers you have in town, only 5% of them have EV vehicles or EVs?
that might be something we look at, but I don't think it would be scored as highly as some of the,
Okay.
LIDAC or EJC
Okay,
considerations.
all right, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Josh?
Thanks, Steve. Just a question about like the difference between the expedited timeline and the sort of custom pathway. Somerville, like a lot of other communities, has a exclusively like charge point run network, and I think ideally we'd like to continue on that. Like, so if that type of change in manufacture and ideally going to like the 12 kilowatt as opposed to 7 kilowatt, what kind of expectations do you have in terms of the timeline change from the expedited to the custom path?
Yeah, I think it depends on what's changing. We at Commonwealth here, we install charge point stations all the time. I don't think that switching from, a flow level 2 7 kW charger to a charge point level 2 is necessarily going to delay the project significantly,
Right.
if at all. So I don't think there would be a huge issue there. It's really more of the larger system, changes, if you want to go to, 19 kW chargers or, go to 20 chargers on the street or something like that, then that might be a more custom design that would have to, be designed by an engineering firm and go through some of that. But if it's a like for like swap, that wouldn't be as big of an issue.
Great, thanks. And then a quick follow-up. I've submitted for a couple of sites, but we have like a siting strategy plan that we have. Is there a way I can send that as like a follow-up document for consideration, or would that not be considered in your sort of judging?
No, that would help. And that's a great point. If, a municipality has already received some kind of planning study from a consultant or something, that's not going to give you an edge in the application process by any means. But if you are awarded, then we would certainly use that and, not duplicate efforts. And, Leidos would be able to use that as part of the planning study or, as part of our site selection. And I do think we've gotten yours from Somerville, Josh, already. So,
Rockin'. Thanks, Steve.
yeah, thank you. Hi, Heather.
Hello, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
My question I had thrown in the chat was, I'm from the city of Taunton. We previously took part in a Mass EV IPDCFC award program. The award has since passed. Are we still eligible, or is it because we have taken a part of the program at any point that we are no longer eligible for either?
Yeah, good question. So it's a totally separate program. This is, through federal funding that the Mass CEC has to administer. So participating in a past program through the state or through your utility would not prevent you from participating in this program. I will say that we will be looking when we're doing the site selection process at, number of existing charging stations, and would try to strategically, site those in locations that need them.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was my only question.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, Charles.
Hi, Stephen. Thanks for taking my question. In the application, it says percent of census tracts in environmental justice communities. And when I visit the Massachusetts 2020 EJ populations map tool, it looks like it goes down to the block group. So we might have, I think we have 33 census tracts here in the city of Cambridge, and some tracts have block groups that are EJ, but it's not showing the tract as EJ. And I just wanted to make sure I didn't input the wrong data. So I'm not sure if you have any clarifications or if my question was worded well enough for you to give an answer.
Yeah, no, that does make sense, and apologies for not making that clearer on the application, but maybe we can add some clarification language in the next revision. But I would say if there is any part of that census tract that has an EJ block group, you could count that as environmental justice, and take that number of tracts, as a percentage of the overall number of tracts, and use that to fill out that field.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Just looking in the chat here, Mary was asking how implementation would coincide with a third-party owned structure, and if you could elaborate, since these types of ownership models have their own process and criteria for placement. So I'll answer that one first. Yeah, they do have their own process. We would expect them to be able to work with us, and we really want this to be a municipality-driven program. With a lot of community input. We're not just going to place these wherever that third-party company wants them. We're going to be very strategic and work with you all to make sure that they're sited correctly and that they're set up for operation in a way that makes sense for you. So I would not worry about that. And emphasis on LIDAC areas. What if there's more EV abundance outside of those areas, as is likely? That is a good point. We're hoping that with the influx of charging infrastructure that we're hoping to achieve in some of these low-income and disadvantaged areas, that would promote EV adoption in those areas. Kind of a if you build it, they will come sort of approach. So I don't think that the fact that more EV drivers might be outside of those neighborhoods would be a reason that we would put the stations there. We really want to prioritize deployment of the charging infrastructure in some of those disadvantaged areas. That was just the Q&A, but let me check the chat. Okay. Does it have to be on-street parking? What about municipal lots adjacent? We have asked that question. I know there are a lot of municipal facilities with parking lots or just public parking lots that are next to busy streets. But unfortunately for this program, they do have to be on-street charging stations. So parallel parking or pull-in parking, but just off of the main travel corridor there. Next question from Bernard. Are communities in N-Grid territory eligible in addition to Eversource territory? Yes, absolutely. I know that's probably 80 to 90% of the state that's in one of those two utility companies' territories. So we've spoken with National Grid, we've spoken with Eversource. They're excited about the program and going to work with us to deploy these successfully. There's not going to be any conflict with the utility incentive programs. As I mentioned, we're not going to pursue those programs. This is really its own standalone program that can cover 100% of the project. And yes, municipal light plans are certainly being considered as well. We know that some of those light plants are able to work a bit more flexibly and are a bit more nimble than some of the larger utilities sometimes. So we're excited to partner with some of them as well. Last question that I see here, do the chargers have to be installed on existing utility poles? How about streetlight poles or custom poles on the street? So our expedited design package is focused on pedestal mounted stations, not pole mounted. We know that there is an appetite for pole mounted chargers, and this has been successfully deployed in 1 or 2 cities in Mass. We know the utilities have certain requirements about putting infrastructure, third-party attachments on their poles. And the approval process to get some of that done would be lengthy and might, prevent the project from being completed on, in the program term. So we're not to say we're not going to explore it if that's the way that the municipality wants to go, but our chosen approach is going to be the pedestal mount, unless Eversource or National Grid are able to do, a timely approval of this, or if it's a municipal light plant who is open to installing on their poles, we can certainly work with that. If it's a private pole or, a city-owned pole, then we could certainly explore that option as well. Both pole mounted and pedestal mounted are on the table, but we just think that for the speed at which we're trying to deploy this program, the pedestal mounts are going to make the most sense. That's all the questions I see. Is there anything else from the group? Yeah, Talia.
Sorry to, I'm revisiting Charles' question about the calculation of the percentage of tracked. So I'm just clarifying that that's a separate calculation we have to make, that's because that's not readily available on the EJ, like the EEA map. Like stats that are available include the percentage of the population that's in an EJ block group, not a tract. So I'm just wondering if like that's actually, maybe this is exactly what Charles was asking, but is that actually what you guys intended for community staff to do, is to recalculate that? Whereas the statistics of the percentage of the population within an EJ block group in a given community is like, there's a list that is published. So that's more maybe a clarification for you all internally before folks have to go calculating things, unless I'm misunderstanding what you're asking for.
That is a fair question. I think I'll take this one back and we'll figure out a better way to frame that question on the application. It's pretty quick and easy to make changes to the application at this point, so we can get that cleaned up for you and hopefully make it more clear.
Thanks.
Well, I'll share the screen one more time just to put my contact info up there. Let's see. Here we go. So thank you again for joining this webinar. I hope you learned something about the program, and we're very excited to work with you all. Again, if you have any questions as you're filling out the application, don't hesitate to reach out. And yeah, I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and thank you again.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.